Alright, what's going on everyone? So it's that time of year again. It is late March, early April, and you might know what that means. It's time to talk about Challenger decks, or the lack of Challenger decks. It has been 2 years since Challenger decks released, and it's been so long in fact that I actually think I need to explain what they are because I make a lot of new player content and there actually might be a lot of people watching this video who don't even know what they are. So Wizards of the Coast used to take tier 1 competitive decks and they would actually print them into paper decks that you could buy and play at standard Friday Night Magic. They would take some of the valuable cards out, but often they were worth $80 to $120 and they often sold for $25 to $35 or so. So it was a great deal. It was a great way to get into standard. It was a very easy way to get into standard. They were amazing. The problem is, because of the time it took to produce them, they would often release just 6 months before rotation. They would release in April. Rotation usually happens in October-ish, or the fall sometime. So basically they would release and 6 months later they would be useless because they would contain rotated cards. So not only were they kind of bad for players, or they were really good but for a short time, but they were also really bad for local game stores because they would buy them and then maybe sell half of them if they were lucky, and then they just became useless junk. So they weren't very profitable to sell. And the reason I talk about this is I feel like all of that has been fixed now. So the problem in the past is we had 2-year standard rotation. Standard rotated every year, but sets would stay in standard for 2 years before rotating out. So what that meant was when standard would rotate in the fall, half the format would rotate out, right? But now that we have 3-year rotation, now that we have 3 years worth of sets in standard, now only 1/3 of the sets rotate out. This fall, the Innistrad sets, Kamigawa, and Streets of New Capenna, those are the only 4 sets that are rotating out, and we're still going to have Dominaria, Brothers War, Phyrexia, March of the Machines, Wilds of Eldraine, Lost Caverns, Karlov Manor, and Thunder Junction at rotation. So only 1/3 of the format is rotating, and what that means is not only are standard decks only going to lose 1/3 of their cards, obviously with a lot of variation depending on which sets are prominent in any specific deck, but it also means that you could very easily make these decks and just not use cards from the sets that are rotating and have decks that will be playable for a year and a half. In the past, so much of the format rotated out that you couldn't do that. You could not release a challenger deck, cut all of the rotating cards, and have it function. You'd lose too much of it. But now, with so little of the format rotating out, I would think it would be not too difficult to just cut out Innistrad, Kamigawa, and New Capenna sets and still have tier 1 decks and be good to go, right? And to illustrate that, we're here. Ha, you thought I was reading from a script? Wrong. I've been here the whole time. So this is the current standard metagame. We're on MTG Goldfish because they are, I think, a little bit better at keeping track of best of 3 paper tournaments. Places like Untapped are mostly arena data, which is great if you're playing arena. But for challenger decks and whatnot, I want to go to a site like this. Anyway, let's just open a bunch of these really quick, and I just want to see if we could make challenger decks out of these. So let's start with this Dimir mid-range deck. Let's see. Remember, the rotating sets are the Innistrad sets, Kamigawa, and New Capenna. So we've got Lost Caverns, we've got March of the Machines, we've got Murders of Karlov Manor, we've got Brothers War, we've got Caverns, we've got Dominaria, we've got Caverns. We have Dominaria, we have Brothers War, there we go. 1 card rotating, and it's just a counter spell. You can replace this with any counter spells. Now, I will say that if they made this deck a challenger deck, right, and they replaced this, you would get some complaining, right? I can imagine the Tolarian Community College video saying, "Oh, why'd they make this appear out? That's dumb. It's a $2 card." But the reason you cut this out is if you made this deck and you just replace this with any other counterspell, even if it's a suboptimal one, this deck in its box would be good for a year and a half. The local game store that buys this would be able to still sell it next April. It would still be good if you just took this out. And if you kept it in, even if it's just a $2 card, the problem is you would have to explain to players, hey, if you buy this, you have to remove this card, and it's more complicated. If you just cut it out, I know it's technically the played card, but if you just replace this with any counterspell, let's go down to the... Dang, I was really hoping there'd be another counter. There's another counterspell that's played a lot in the Azorius decks at least. But you could do that. Instead of 100% optimal, it'd be 95% optimal, and that would be fine, right? Let's look at Boros Convoke. We have new card. We have... That would need to be replaced. Is that replaceable? Probably needs to be replaced with like Yoshin Frontliner. That does feel kind of bad, but there's that. That's still fine. Oh, there it is. Yeah, we need 4 of these instead of 2. This is fine. This is fine. This is fine. That's fine. That's fine. That is fine. That is fine. And then we get to the lands. So there's one card rotating once again. You could definitely print this, though losing this would kind of suck. It does weaken the deck. Yoshin Frontliner's definitely suboptimal. Let's go down to the metagame thing. Is there anything else this deck plays? Not really. It seems to be mostly that. Next we have Esper mid-range, and I can tell you right now that we would not be able to do this deck. We have Rafine, we have the Wandering Emperor, and without these, this deck could be much worse. There are a lot of new cards. Oh, this also, Denek. Yeah, so this would be off the table. If I'm working at Wizards of the Coast, we're not printing this deck. It's just not viable. So that's off the table. That's fine. This is also pretty bad because we're losing the Triomes. A lot of this is fine, technically. Yeah, like this is fine. Atraxa is the main thing we're ramping into. That's fine. We lose an important ramp piece. Depopulate goes away, but we can probably replace it with another board sweeper. All of this is fine. Lily Line's Binding's fine. The danger is it still good without these lands? And I'm a little bit skeptical. Maybe you could put basics and some budget fetch lands, right? But I'm not sure. Next we have Golgari mid-range. This is fine. This is fine. Glissa's fine. That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. All of this is playable. Yeah, nothing. This deck loses nothing. You could just print this. This is fine. And it's good for the next year and a half. If you just put this in a box. That's it. That's all you got to do. I mean, you gotta budgetize it, right? They're not gonna print a $300 deck, but you know, you cut some preachers, you budgetize the mana base. This is rotating anyway. Definitely budgetize the sideboard. They always give us bulk 25-cent cards in the sideboard, so all of this goes, right? But you could definitely print this into a deck, and that's no problem. Let's look at some more, shall we? This one, and this one, and this one, and this one. And this one. Alright, Azorius Control is a bit rough with the Wandering Emperor going. We lose that as well. The March, that goes... Does this play the new counter? Oh, it's blue-white. That's why the Dimir deck doesn't play it. Whoops. Yeah, this is... I would say I wouldn't want to print this deck. You could put another Planeswalker in or something, but I would say no to that. What's this deck built around? This is the weird... Okay, Shigeki. This is pretty important for the deck, so I wouldn't print this deck either. Also, it's a 3-color deck, which means the mana base is going to be important. Alright, red aggro, we know this is going to be playable, right? Swift Spear stays, Phoenix Chick stays, this is fine, this is fine. This is fine, Monstrous Rage is fine, Play with Fire needs to go, but it just gets replaced with Shock. Both of these are fine, Kumano has to go, but I mean, surely we can find another red aggro card. Do you think there's another red aggro card we could put here? I think there might be. And I know, already in my head, I could imagine, right, the professor being like, oh, every single red deck in existence, every single, 100% of decks that have ever existed play this card. How dare you, Wizards of the Coast, not put this in? But by not putting it in and just putting some other red aggro card, I don't know, Bloodthirsty Adversary also not playable. Any red 1-drop would be fine. Just by doing that, this deck is good for a year and a half. Like, it's fine. It's worth the sacrifice. And if you really, really want this, it's $2. Whatever they replace it with, whatever sort of off 1-drop that they add, you can buy 4 of these, put them in for now, save that card, and then 6 months later, when this rotates, your deck is still good out of the box. And also, your local game store could still sell it for another year, right? Seems pretty obvious to me. Rakdos mid-range is probably not going to be good, right? Bloodthirsty Adversaries, no. Blood Tithe Harvester is a no. Tenacious Underdog is no. Graveyard Trespasser is no. All of this is a big no, so we lose way too much. I would say this is not printable. we would give a pass to this deck and not print it, which is fine. You only need 4 decks. There's like probably 10 or 15 decks that I would say are, maybe we'll say like 10 decks that are tier 1, and we only need 4, right? We only need 4 good ones, which we've already found 4 good ones, but we know this is all playable. This is Toxic, right? Toxic is a Phyrexian, a parasitic Phyrexian ability, so all of this is just Phyrexian stuff, so all of this is good. There might be, let's see, Fading Hope. That would need to be replaced. Oh no, we have to find a different bounce spell. Gee, I wonder if there's another bounce spell in Standard. The answer is yes. So this is fine. We could print this. We could also print the green-white version if you want to make the mana base cheaper. That's fine. We could print Dimir mid-range. We could print Golgari mid-range. We could print red aggro. They like to have every color and every archetype represented, so maybe we call this Dimir Control and we add some more counter spells to it or something. So we have blue, black, green, red. We're missing white, and I know there's white aggro. Surely we could put Azorius Tempo in, right? Surely Azorius Tempo is fine. This is fine. That's fine. Haughty Jin's fine. Mentor's fine. Yeah, for sure. We lose Consider, but the key reanimation things are all fine. Why are these not popping up when I scroll through? Very annoying. But Recommission and Helping Hand's fine. Surely we have more blue filtering. We definitely like the Surveil though. Is this in any other sets in Standard? Has it been printed in? No. I'd really want that, but maybe it's fine. I don't know. We could definitely just print a white aggro deck, even though it doesn't look like it's in the tier 1 right this second. It definitely has been in the past, right? You could do an Azorius Soldiers deck for sure. Look, I know technically it's not a tier 1 deck right now, but I mean, what? This goes away, but that's fine. It's not important. All the important stuff, Harbin, Resolute Reinforcements, Knight Errant stays. Wedding Announcement goes, by the way, so that's relevant. But I mean, like, this is very playable. So my point is, it's really weird that they stopped printing these at a time when, well, it's like the easiest time to do it now, right? All the problems that these decks had, it's not a problem anymore. They were amazing, but the problem was the time window when they were relevant. You only had 6 months to play them, and that's no longer the issue, right? Now you can build these and you can have them be tournament viable for a year and a half. And I would say, like, I know the obvious, you know, the pessimistic explanation is that Wizards of the Coast is greedy and they didn't want to print them when they would be viable for a year and a half. They were only printing them because they were good for 6 months, and now that they're potentially good for a year and a half, they didn't like that. But the problem is they made Pioneer decks, right? The Pioneer decks are still playable and they will always be playable. I mean, some of them have banned cards in them, to be fair, but I mean, if they were worried about the longevity of, like, oh no, we don't want to print these and have them be good for a year and a half because we're evil and greedy, well then they never would have made the Pioneer decks. So yeah, my point is, I just find it weird that they quit making these right at the time when literally all of the problems with them were fixed. But the good news is, I will announce this publicly now at the end of the video, because no one's going to make it this far, right? I am working officially, finally, on upgrading all the old Standard decks in the Pioneer. Yeah, so those are coming. We will be upgrading the old Standard decks in the Pioneer very soon. Also, if you're looking for budget decks, because we don't have Challenger decks, I have been posting budget versions of these decks. I've done Boros Convoke, I've done Golgari Midrange, I forget what all I've done. I guess the benefit of recording this way is I can just check. I have done, let's see, Mono Red Aggro, Golgari Midrange, I've done Boros Convoke, and I have done Rakdos Sacrifice and Pioneer. So check those out if you want some cheap decks that Wizards of the Coast won't give you. And more to come. Alright, that's all. That's it. Thanks for watching, everyone. And I will see you in the... Oh, you can see when I recorded this now. Oh, that's awkward. Well, okay, that's all. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.